Why did you say that you don't feel like Gabe is one of like your type of managers? Because we kind of were
Well,
discussing this as you were
I
coming
would
on.
say that every I was overhearing everything that you guys were talking about, and that's kind of been him through his career. And so, we all have personalities, and you have to be able to know and get along with it. Like perfect example, the Mets. Just let Buck Showalter go. Buck Showalter is probably a Hall of Fame manager, one of the best managers that has managed the game. Why would they do that? Well, probably because the personality with David Stearns may not match with Buck Showalter, and so that's the general manager's prerogative. Plus, also, and again, maybe in San Francisco, there was issues maybe with player communication and the way that he managed them. To your point, what happened with the pitching change and the pitcher making a joke, putting the ball in his pocket. That just doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. So that to me, yeah, that's a little disrespectful, and that's on the manager really at the end of the day.
Al, would you say you were? I mean, obviously you started a long time ago, so I'm assuming you're going to say you're more of an old school guy. You're not a. I know you believed in analytics and you did some analytical stuff, but Gabe was heavy analytics with Farhan. So if you were hiring a manager today, what are you looking for? Because Buck is an
Well,
old school guy. He got let go, right? Gabe, new school. He got let go by a new school organization. So just depend on the GM or the president of baseball ops who you hire and how you can communicate.
and that's a good point because it really doesn't have anything to do with am I an analytical guy or I'm an old school guy. I'm an old school guy. I basically changed the entire Detroit Tiger organization and brought in analytics and brought in analysts more so than you could imagine. And even at player development, most of the people that we hired were guys with combination baseball analytics. And I'm an old school guy. I came to learn analytics late in my career. So, but that really doesn't have anything to do with this decision. This is more of a decision on how to handle players, how to handle people and relationships and communication, and your style of play, your style of managing. That's more of this reasoning.
The situation with Council and Stearns. Obviously, Council's still in the playoffs. Stearns is now the new GM slash head of president, whatever his exact role is. Have you ever seen a situation like this where a guy is currently successful as a manager on a team, and yet a team hires somebody that was his original boss, is thinking, or maybe we're just putting words in his mouth, but could be poaching that manager away?
Well, it certainly could be happening. Obviously, we don't really know the whole story and what's really going on behind closed doors. We don't know that, so we can't make any accusations. We can only assume. But I will say that if you're a general manager, you're going to want to work with somebody that you feel. And to his point, and I saw his interview because I feel the same way, and I've always said it. The field manager, you have to work together with him as a team, and it's teamwork between the general manager and the field manager, and those personalities have to mesh. Number one, you have to have. I can't say you should be able to see eye to eye on every little issue because really sometimes that's not healthy either. But you have to have mutual respect for each other. You have to have good communication. You have to be able to trust each other in that sense. So, for a general manager, it's very important to have somebody in that position that that he can be comfortable with to some degree.
Who has the final say? You hire the guy you want. You guys are having these meetings right now. Today, Al Avila is talking to manager X. They're making their playoff roster. Who has the final say? Because you said there has to be a back and forth, but there has to be a leader in that meeting too.
Yeah, and every team is going to be different. There are teams that the front office, quote unquote, the general manager is going to have the final say. I know that for a fact, and it's there. And there's going to be a few, and probably less today than ever before, where the manager will have that final say. And and growing up in this in this business, I've always taught that when you hire somebody, you hire them to make decisions and run it. All you can do is give them as many assets, or good ball players as you can, and as much good information as you can, and make your opinion strong. And then the person you put in charge to run that field operation, which is your field manager, he'll have the final say, because at the end of the day, it's going to be on him, as it should be. So for me, if I'm running it, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make my case. I'm going to give him all the information, and then we're going to come down to a good. Let me put it this way: if he's going to come and put in a lineup that I know for a fact that me and my front office, there's no way that we're going to accept it, then I would have to probably say, hey, that's not going to work. But at the end of the day, if you hire the right manager and you have the right people and you have the right conversations, I think you're going to have an agreement that everybody's going to be happy with. But at the end of the day, the manager is the one that's going to be on the field having to deal with all the situations that come up, and he should know the best.
Al, if you were David Stearns and you just get rid of Buck Showalter, and let's say Counsell stays in Milwaukee, who's on your short list of managers? Is it someone that we know? Because they have a kind of a veteran team with guys that are locked in. Or do you go, they already tried, the young guy, the up-and-comer, didn't go so well. So what's their move if you're a Mets fan?
Well, there's a lot of good candidates. Okay, it's hard for me to tell you. I mean, actually, I really wouldn't want to go out there and just give you a couple of names. But to his point, to say they're going to do a wide net search, which I've been through those, and it's a good idea because number one, there'll be guys out there that you don't know too much about that you get to know more about. So you get to know more about different organizations, different people. And when you talk to that many different guys and ask all these questions, you get a lot of information. So to a certain degree, that's part of the reasoning of making a wide search, because you're going to get a lot of information from a lot of different organizations, and a lot of good-minded guys with good minds. So that in itself is a good process to go through, whether you mean to really go through it and find your candidate that way or not. So I just want to make that statement. But at the end of the day, there's enough guys out there, whether you want a veteran guy or you want a young guy that maybe it's not as well tested yet. But being in New York, you better find a guy that has the ability to face the media every single day, to face the scrutiny and criticism every single day, because that's part of the job. It's a big part of the job. And so, in that sense, you better get a guy that is very mature. He might not have the most experience maybe on a day-to-day on the field, but you better have a guy that not only can handle day-to-day baseball ops, but you better have a guy that can handle the day-to-day criticism, the media, and everything else that comes with it. That's the way I look at it. I have guys that I've interviewed that I didn't hire, but I thought that would be very good managers. And, the Angels have one in Phil Nevin. I love Phil. I think he's an excellent judge of character. I think he's an excellent judge of talent. And I think he's a good leader. Mark Kotsay, another one. Now both guys have jobs, so I'm not lobbying for any of them, but I'm just giving you examples of good baseball guys that have been around the game, played a long time, and know the game and know the players and know how to lead men. So that kind of personality is what I'm looking for.
So you're saying the White Sox shouldn't have hired Chris Getz without interviewing GMs? Okay, thank you, Al, for agreeing with the world. But now let's get on to more important matters. Because, listen, the White Sox could have interviewed everybody and found out the philosophies of all 29 other organizations. Said they didn't interview anybody, and they're in the same rep. But I digress. Now, the Padres. The Padres are probably the biggest disappointment in baseball this year. How much as a GM, if you're AJ Preller, do you put on Bob Melvin and say, listen, Bob, you didn't lead these guys. Yes, they finished over 500, but everyone was talking about them going to the World Series because of the way they finished beating the Dodgers last year. So as GM, do you go to your manager and say, hey, we got to be better?
Well, that would be hard let me just reverse it. It would be hard for a manager to go to his GM and say, hey, I want better players and more players, because they certainly had their pick of the litter there. But at the end of the day, the manager may not have. And I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on with the Padres because I don't know. I'm on the outside, but just watching and reading, it gives you the impression that the manager's hands may be tied. And not be able to run it the way he wants to. And we just talked about that, as far as who has the final decision on certain situations, whether it be the roster, the lineup that day, or even pitching moves. So his hands might be tied to the point where he can't manage to the best of his ability because it might, the directions that are coming from the top. So, that's probably the situation, but I couldn't tell you 100%. Now, in saying that, it also seems like there's a disconnect between manager and general manager, in that again, the communication and the trust back and forth, and that kind of thing. So, there's probably a lot of blame to go around.
All right, Al, are you trading Mike Trout if you are the GM of the Angels?
Well, you can't trade Mike Trout. Number one, he's got a no trade clause. He's already said he's not going anywhere. He has said that. He's come across saying he's going to be getting ready for spring training next year. You just took me. Oh, so there he is. So he just said he's going to get ready for spring training next year. He doesn't want to go anywhere, and so it would be impossible to trade a guy that doesn't want to be traded. Number one. Number two, if you did have the possibility of trading him, it would be very, very hard. And here's why. He's been injured just about every year. I mean, he's played half his games. He's still old. I think he still has 7 years on his contract, obviously at a high dollar amount. So even if he would be willing to be traded and you would find a buyer, you're going to find a buyer that's going to want you to eat a lot of that contract. I would say at least 30%, just based on his injury history. You wouldn't want to pay him that full amount. So, if you're going to get anything in return, you're going to probably eat up a lot of that contract. So those are the caveats that would come with that. But I don't think there's any way they're going to trade him because he's come out saying, I don't want to be traded, and he's got no trade clause. So now in saying that, obviously there's certain incentives that players can get that maybe change their mind. But in this case, I think Trout's pretty well entrenched in Anaheim or out there.
But he said he wants to have that meeting. He said at the end of the season he wants to have this meeting. And he comes to you and says he wants out because I know he wants to win. And he comes to you and he says, listen, Al, I really want to win. I want out of here. I don't want to make this public, but if you don't get me out of here.
I get you. But the thing is, he's had those meetings every year for the last, 10 years. It's the same meeting. And he didn't even come out and said it himself. I've had these meetings every year, and he's the first one that tries to shoot down every little gossip that is out there. What I call, I guess, false information that he wants to be traded. He's been shooting that down for years, and this year is no different. And he keeps on saying, I never said that. I don't want to go anywhere. I've had these meetings for the last 10, 13 years. It's the same meeting I have every year. Now, in saying that, I am sure that what he is hoping is to convince Artie and who's ever in charge, Perry, obviously, that, hey, we're going to try to continue to win. I'm going to come back. I'm going to get healthy. I'm doing all I can. Rendon, he's going to be healthy. Obviously, he can contribute. He's going to want to influence ownership to do the best they can to put together the best team possible going into next year. That's what I think he's going to do, or part of his meeting.
So you want him to say it with his chest, be like, "I want to get the fuck out of here." Basically, is what you're saying.
Well, the thing is,
because it might. Listen, I know that injuries.
What could happen in this conversation is that he might come in and they might tell him, "Hey, you know what? We're going to rip this apart. This is going to be a horrible team and for the duration of your contract, this is going to be a bad team. So your best bet is if you want to win, to let us trade you. We'll send you to the best team possible, the best situation possible. You'll have control if you want to or you don't want to go, and see what he says. In that case, then you might have a chance. But I don't know that that's going to happen.
Okay, so let's go to somebody that you did trade for, that you found a way to trade for, Miguel Cabrera, when you were with the Tigers, from the Marlins to the Tigers, right? So, I mean, first ballot Hall of Famer. Can you tell any Miguel Cabrera stories that no one knows yet?
Well, I don't really think I should tell any stories. No, but
Why? Its career's over. It's all good.
Baseball stories, Al.
Yeah, good stuff.
We're not talking, stories like in the
I
clubhouse.
thought you were looking for. I thought you were looking for some bad dirt there.
No.
Just like, what's he like behind the scenes?
No.
Yeah, like what you got to deal with him like on a personal basis every single day.
Yeah.
What was he like? What were some of the quirks? Like, did he do anything silly? I don't know. Give us the good stuff about Miggy that maybe we couldn't
talk about. What I can tell you
about
about Miguel Cabrera, he's always been very helpful to me. Okay, obviously, when we traded for him with the Marlins, we knew him since he was 15 years old, and we knew the family, and we had a great relationship with the family. So even though after Dave and I left to Detroit, okay, and this situation came up, we had, you don't make this kind of trade unless you think you're going to sign a guy to a long-term contract. So two things had to happen. You had to have a pretty good feeling that you're going to be able to do it, right, with the player, number one. And number two, that your owner is going to be on board to spend the money. So the first thing that happened was, calling the owner, and the owner is like, well, I told you to try to get him, and you did, so let's go get him, and now we'll make it work with the dollars. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, obviously, over the people that over the years, you have a good feeling that you're going to be able to sign them and keep them long term. And so, and that was a good part of it. Now, once he comes aboard, obviously, we had him for the best years of his career, and every day that he went out there was an amazing day, because what is he going to do today? So we were very blessed to be able to watch in the city of Detroit, to be able to watch him on a day-to-day basis. And we surrounded him with really good hitters, guys like Maglio Ordonez and Victor Martinez and Prince Fielder. And he enjoyed the best times of his life, I can tell you that. And once we got Jim Leland in there, it made it all even better. So now for me, when I took over as a general manager, obviously it was already the last few years of his career. And it was the toughest part of his career, because he had suffered and played with a lot of injuries. At that point, he's a difficult guy to trade at that point, even though he was still probably tradable when I first took over. But then again, you have an owner that wants to keep a Hall of Famer in the organization, which I completely understand. Now, so one good thing I can tell you about Miguel is, during those tough times, he was very helpful to me and very helpful to all the players that came through the system that we were throwing out there to see, who's going to be sticking around, who's not going to be sticking around. And he was always very gracious to the young players, especially the Latin players. Paid for a lot of, the new guys that came in, paid for a lot of their clothing, their food. He was very generous with all of them. And so I would say he in a tough situation with a rebuilding organization, he actually, did everything the right way. So that one thing I can tell you, I'm very grateful to him, and he's a true pro. And the respect that he gave me and really everybody in the organization, and including those players that came through, and some that, quite frankly, didn't pan out. He was very respectful to all of them and very helpful. That's not a lot. That's the guy that is true.
Yeah. Who's gonna have a better career at the end, Miggy or Mike Trout? Because they're very similar through their age 31 season.
Well, I got to say, Miggy hasn't missed that much time like Trout has. Trout is the better athlete. That conversation always came about all the way through the years. Miggy's best years. Who's better, Miggy or Trout? Miggy or Trout? And then they were talking about WAR. And of course, everybody figured in Trout's his defense, which was obviously outstanding. Miggy could have probably been a much better defender, because he had great hands, a cannon for an arm. He had smooth footwork and all that. But obviously, because of his injuries, it didn't allow him to probably stay in shape. You have different types of workouts, so he put on a little bit more weight. So that caused him obviously to move from third base to first base, from first base into DH. But Mickey played throughout year in and year out with injuries that I know that were very painful. I saw the black and blues, and some of them were really deep, where you're wondering how's he doing it, And so he played through injuries and just staying on the field, and helping the team win. That's why I give the edge to Miggy. The Trout is obviously the better athlete all the way around. When you're looking at obviously the position that he played and all that, but when you're looking at a day-to-day, on the field and playing through those injuries, I've got to say Miguel Cabrera is one of the toughest players I've ever come across.
All right, so Al, I have to ask this, and they're going to be like, "What are you talking about?" But you'll get this. Being from Miami, and then you went to St. Thomas University, and you played for Paul Mainieri, who I know very well. Who had the better career? Paul Mainieri, Air Force, Notre Dame, won a national championship at LSU, or you, St. Thomas, Marlins, Tigers, GM?
Well, I got to say, they're two completely different careers. Because,
would you switch, though? Would you switch with them?
Apples and oranges. I will say, though, I give it to Paul Mainieri because he did win a national championship, went to the World Series twice. You can't beat that. And on the big stage, he managed LSU. Let me tell you, you can't get any bigger than that. That's. I mean, if you're not managing the World Series at Major League Baseball, that's the next best place to be, and he did it. And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have had my career probably if it wasn't for Paul Mainieri. He ended up hiring me at St. Thomas, and now I did work for free, and he'll tell you that for a long time. Guys today won't work for free, and but I learned there. I learned a lot there. Him and Doc Mainieri, his dad, were tremendous people. And it comes all from his father, Doc. He just again love to help guys out and girls reach their potential and their dreams. That's what these guys did, and he learned that from Doc, his dad. And so I got to say that if it wasn't for Paul, I probably wouldn't even have a career in Major League Baseball.
So if he wouldn't have left for Air Force, because he recruited me at Air Force, that's how long I've known Paul Mainieri. Would he have tried to recruit me at St. Thomas, and I could have played for Paul Mainieri and Al Avila?
That's right. You sure could have.
Wow, the world really missed out on AJ Pierzynski at St. Thomas. Hey, Al, great to catch up.
You got to be pretty smart to get into Air Force.
He was all over me. Trust me. He tried hard. I give him credit. If he would have been anywhere but Air Force, I would have gone and played for him. He's awesome.
Did you have the grades for Air Force?
Come on, bro.
What? I don't know what your grades
What
are.
did Bryce Harper say? That's a clown question.
I want to
say, it's funny because when I took over St. Thomas, we ended up playing the University of Miami quite a bit every year, and Ron Frazier was obviously the head coach of the University of Miami, who was also a good friend of Wayne Huizinga's, and I was good friends of Ron Frazier. Obviously, if you guys remember back in the day, Lasorda was a good friend of Ron Frazier, so I got to hang out quite a bit. Lasorda used to come down before spring training and come through Miami and did fundraisers for me and for Ron. And so we got to know each other really well. Ron was one of the guys that actually recommended me to Wayne Huizinga, and then, of course, eventually Dave Dombrowski to be hired with the Marlins back in those days.
Wow. Small circle, man.
Tiny
small world.
It's a small baseball world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad we got that in there, Al. Thank you.
Yeah. AJ's going to be bragging about it all day. Could have gone to Air Force or Thomas, wherever I want, but I was a big leaguer. Al,
hey,
you could have
made. Hey, you could have. I'll tell you what. You could have gone to almost any college. You could have set your mind to. So
I can't wait to see these Hall of Fame grades that AJ has for me.
1B. I'm just saying 1B, and I got screwed.
1B. What happened?
Hey, Mike Piazza almost went to St. Thomas.
Mike Piazza turned out better than I did, so.
That's another conversation.
Yeah, that will have a different conversation. Thanks, Al.
Good to see you, Al. Enjoy the playoffs. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.